So one of the main reasons I did this channel was to show that you could have disagreements with people and still be civil and be friends with people. I'm in a unique position where I happen to be like a right-wing type person, but through being in college for so long, because it took me forever, and doing policy debate, I made a lot of friends that are like far on the left, like Democratic, Socialist, Progressive, and we're still really good friends. We think each other are morons when it comes to our political opinions, but we can have discussions even if they get heated, and we're still friends at the end of the day, and we don't think each other are immoral people. And I wanted to kind of show that that's possible to do, because it seems that our political discourse, both in the United States and around the world, seems to be escalating where no one's discussing things anymore. It's just hurling insults or advocating violence against each other. So I think there's two ways to look at why that type of discourse is bad. The first is it morally acceptable? But oftentimes that argument's not going to be enough, because it's hard to convince people of morality and things of that nature. So people tend to think that they're doing things for the right reasons. So you're not going to change their mind. So the second way you look at it is it pragmatic, or is your argumentation style going to be successful? And I would argue that oftentimes this type of political discourse we're seeing of insults or advocating violence would not be successful. So I wanted to just look at those two strategies real quick. The first, the question of morality. So let's take a Trump supporter, and you, like me, and you might think that you've basically been crapped on for many years, where people think you're just part of flyover country, and you get this stereotype that you're just some moron redneck, you're less educated, things like that. I think that's been occurring for years. It doesn't matter who started what, though. That's irrelevant to the point of this video. So because you see that, and then you see someone like that guy go on CNN and say that you're, a 10-tooth racist, and all the people on CNN laugh, or you hear Hillary call people deplorables, you have a visceral gut reaction that that's wrong, and you then say, well, hey, if people are going to talk about me like this, then I'll talk about them and the people that follow them in the same type of manner with the same insults. The fact that you have a visceral reaction that that's wrong shows that there is something immoral about that. And there is. We shouldn't be having discussions like that. However, as soon as you then, and you're right to point that out, and you should, as soon as you then reciprocate by using the same type of strategy, you kind of lose your ability to criticize that on moral grounds. Because you're now engaged in the same behavior. So both sides are equally being immoral. It doesn't matter who started it. And so you lose your ability to do that. And it's the only thing we really have control over in life is how we behave. Our personal integrity and things like that. And I don't think it's worth giving up and worth becoming immoral because someone acted that way to me. Yeah, you could be forceful, you could show that that's unacceptable, but you don't have to engage in the same type of behavior. And we see this happening in real life right now, where you see tons of people that are talking about, on the left, that are talking about Trump's language being unacceptable. Okay, and so then what do? They defend people that are using the exact same type of language, saying they're going to impeach that mother effer and all sorts of other things. Well, no, that's not the way to go about it. If you think what Trump did was terrible, then you don't do the same thing. You just point out, hey, what he did was terrible. As soon as you engage in the same action or defend people engaged in that same action, then you lose the moral ground. Now, it's the same with advocates for violence. So let's go to the opposite way. Let's say you're an Antifa member, which I heavily disagree with, but you truly believe, many of them truly believe, that violence is going to be enacted by people on the right, that they're all Nazis or something like that. Again, I don't agree with this, but you feel because they are going to justify the use of violence, that then you yourself are justified in using violence against them. But that's not the case. You're only justified in using violence morally if it's in an immediate self-defense. Not because Richard Spencer may advocate a policy that in some point in the future you think would lead to violence against you. The way you beat that is to point out why that policy is bad and why it would lead to violence and use rhetoric. But as soon as you say, no, we're just going to walk up and punch him in the face, then now you have the Richard Spencers of the world going, oh, okay, well, these people are going to use violence against us for no reason, and so we're going to punch them first. It's the same with the language. So then both sides just keep escalating, and nothing ever gets solved. There's no discussions that are ever done. And that's a really bad thing. Plus, there's always a chance you're wrong. Violence particularly is heinous because violence is a very arrogant thing. The only time you could ever be justified doing it is when it's the last resort. But you have to arrogantly then believe that you know that this is so morally justified and this is the last resort. Maybe you're wrong, Maybe when you're saying, hey, everyone's a Nazi, so I have the right to punch him. Oops, maybe that person wasn't a Nazi. Now you became the Nazi, basically. You're the one acting in a fascist manner. And that's what we see happening over and over. The arrogance of saying, I know that everyone is so immoral that I'm physically attacking, that I'm justified doing it. That's very arrogant. We should almost never, ever, ever, ever use political violence. And that goes for both sides. So that's just a little part of that. Now, when we look at the language portion, the last thing I'll say on this morally is, to me, the most important thing, and it's a theme that goes through a lot of these videos I'm realizing, is I just want people to not have double standards. I appreciate someone more and respect someone more who might be totally ideologically something that I find a ridiculous platform. Like, you might be a total communist. I'm totally against communism. But I respect that person more than someone who's closer to me ideologically, but has double standards where they say, oh, if people on my side do something, it's okay. But if someone on the other side does the exact same thing, it's not okay. That to me is my biggest pet peeve. And so when it comes to like this language of insults and things like that, my personal feeling on Trump doing this is I don't like it. I don't like when he's calling Stormy Daniels horseface. I think it's beneath the office. It aggravates me. But I also don't think it's the end of the world. And that's how I feel on the other side. So when, a congressman calls him a mother effer, or Colbert or Samantha Bee, or they use all this language. Well, one, I shouldn't say that because jokes are different. But you know what I'm saying. If politicians on the other side say vile, heinous things against Trump, then that's fine. I still think I think that's beneath them. I feel the exact same way as I do with Trump saying it. Now, maybe you're someone who thinks that Trump's language is totally immoral and unacceptable and is a reason to reject him. Well, then you have to feel the same way. Don't have a double standard when people on the left do it. Because as soon as you have that double standard, it's hard to take you seriously then. Or maybe you don't think you're a Trump supporter and you think his language was funny and you're totally for it. You think it's showing the politically correct people who's boss. Well, then you shouldn't get upset when someone uses that language to retaliate against Trump. You should say, okay, yeah, that's cool. They're further shirking political correctness, and that's a good thing. Now, I do think that insulting politicians is different than insulting, on a moral level, it's different than insulting the people that support them. Like it or not, when you run for public office, you're kind of opening yourself up to criticism. You would like to think that criticism would be based on, the policies you're advocating, but they could be based on like childish things like your looks, your behavior, your mannerisms, things like that, which isn't good necessarily, but yeah, you might get insulted. It seems to be far more immoral to then insult all the followers of a particular candidate. And I think you see that uniquely. You see that all the time with candidates, but you're really seeing people in power go after Trump supporters in this method. That's why CNN can laugh and call them 10-tooth racists. That, to me, seems to be far more immoral. We shouldn't be doing that, attacking people like that. And I would oppose anyone on the right or left doing that because, again, I'm not going to have a double standard about it. So, however, having said that, when we're discussing morality, a lot of times it's hard to convince people. You might discuss someone that's like, no, I'm tired of being attacked, and I feel morally justified in attacking the other side back in the same way. And look, morality is not my specialty. Certainly, I'm not an overly moral person. I try my best, but I'm fallible like anyone else. So you have to look at it in the stage if you're trying to convince someone, then like, okay, well, there's another level to this that's not morality. It is what you're doing an effective strategy? So the easiest way to look at that's like, let's go back to the Antifa example for advocating violence. Let's say you're an Antifa person that you're really against Trump or you're really against right-wing people or populism, things like that. You're trying, the most effective change you can get is to get as many people as possible on your side. So you're never going to get the extreme person on the other side. But you have to understand, even if you're dealing with them, that there's an audience, and that nowadays the audience is obvious and that anyone could whip out a cell phone and your interactions could be shown to basically the entire world. But even aside from that, there's always an audience. There's other people watching how you act and what you're saying. You're trying to get those people that aren't extreme to agree with you. If you start advocating things like violence, there's going to be a visceral reaction from the people that aren't extremely on your side to shirk away from you. They're going to be like, whoa, no. I don't want any parts of that. That's why the idea of a false flag works, right? Like, you have this idea that you hear all the time, like, oh, well, you could send someone in pretending to be Antifa and go punch someone. And the reason that hypothetically works is because the average person's like, no, that's bad. They started that violence. That was bad. So when Antifa's out there advocating, and this was a serious discussion, you saw places like The Guardian saying, yeah, sometimes it's okay to punch a Nazi. We shouldn't do it, but we're not going to say that it's morally wrong to do it. Like, that's absurd. The idea of can you just walk up and punch a Nazi, it's immoral, as I've already said, so I don't want to fall back in that argument. But do you really think that's going to help? Do you think that people that aren't already extremely ideologically aligned with you are going to say, yeah, good point punching that guy? Of course not. Now, the same's going to be true of insults. So let's say you're the Trump supporter. We'll go back to that. And you're like, I'm tired of these people insulting me, so I'm going to start insulting them back. Do you really think that the people, and I think it's the majority of the people that are somewhere in the middle, you might lean one side or the other, or you might be totally in the center, or you might be extremely on one side or the other. And again, those people in the extreme, it's going to be hard to convince. But when you're having interactions, the idea is you want your side to win. You want your ideology to gain traction. And so the first step of that, whether it be in the political process or just in the public sphere, is to get more people to agree with you. Do you think more people are going to listen to your argument if you start off saying, hey, I think Hillary Clinton's a skank, or something like that? Like, people are going to be like, I'm not going to take this seriously, even if the rest of your opinions are good. And that's particularly true if you're not talking about the politicians, but you're talking about their supporters. So if you're like, all Hillary supporters are morons, or blah, blah, it just makes it seem childish. And people don't want to, it's repulsive to people in the center that might want to hear your argument. The same's true on the left. You might think Trump's really bad, and you might think his supporters are making terrible decisions supporting these terrible policies. I say all the time to like my friends that are like more Democrat, like, the best thing the Democratic Party could do is hire someone like me, because I could show them effective strategy to be able to how to pick up the supporters in the middle. So picture this. You lost the 2016 election, and presumably you want to win in 2020. I think that's kind of the point. So what strategy should you be? You're going to need to get some people that voted for Trump, or some people in the middle that voted for neither, to end up voting for you. Do you really think you're going to get people that voted for Trump by telling them that they're all racist deplorables? That they're all 10-toothed? That it's flyover country and they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing? The more effective strategy, this is what the Democrats should say, instead of engaging in that. They should say, hey, you know what? You're right to have not voted us in 2016. We dropped the ball. We used to be about working for the working class people, and we didn't do that. We didn't do a good job of doing that. But we don't think Trump's going to help you. We think his policies will be ineffectual, and we are focused on you now. And here's some of our ideas of how we could help people like you. Clearly, you voted for Trump because you feel like the system is failing you. We get that. It was failing you. Here's what we could do better than Trump. That's effective. But to just come out and be like, you're deplorable, you're a 10-tooth racist because you voted for Trump. The wall, and you could take this on any issue. If you're a Democrat and you want to argue against the wall, you say, we get it. We get that illegal immigration. Border security is a very important thing. We absolutely believe that. But we think the wall is going to cost a lot of money, and we think it'll be ineffectual. And we think there are better ways to go about this. And we also think that we should, even though you're absolutely right to be concerned about illegal immigration, we should try to deal with it in a compassionate way. That's way better than Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying, the wall is immoral. In other words, if you advocate for a wall, then you are an immoral person. Do you really think then that people that advocate for the wall will, in the next election, be like, you know what, I'll vote for the party that told me that I was immoral? Basically, the implication is I was racist for wanting this wall. Of course not. And the same's true on the other side. If you're a Trump supporter, or if you're Trump, if the Republicans want people on their side, it would not behoove them to go out and be like, oh, everyone who voted against Trump's just an anti-American. They don't want to make America great again. They're terrible people that just want this country to fail. That would be a bad strategy, because then people that maybe would have considered voting Republican the next election are going to be like, whoa, no, that's not true. I don't want America to fail at all. I like this country. I just voted for different reasons. So yeah, I'm not going to give you the time of day. So that's why I feel that we should try to, and there's a third reason as well, but it's not necessarily directed at the individual, and that is, as long as this keeps going, it's going to escalate on the whole. So I'm in the United States, that's where I'm focused on, that's where I see the most of this happening, but I know it's happening worldwide. And so as one side increases it a little more, the crappy rhetoric or the calls for violence, it's just going to go up and up and up until we hit a boiling point. And we're truly heading to something where the extremes on both sides are controlling the discourse, and we're heading to some kind of conflict, whether it be an ideological conflict or actual physical conflict. And that's very bad, especially in a country like the United States that has so much diversity. The thing that brings us together, diversity can be a strength, though I think that it's a mantra that's repeated over and over again, and it's just an empty platitude most of the time. But in the sense that there are ways that diversity can be a strength, but we still need things to hold us together cohesively. And the First Amendment and free speech and open dialogues and discussion is that thing. That's the one thing that could keep us together. If we lose that and we start to look at people as ideological enemies and immoral people, what's really going to bind us together then at that point? And things could end up really bad. So I think that's another reason that we need to try to ratchet down this discourse, and we all as individuals could try to do that. Now, that doesn't mean I don't fail. I come off as very smug. I get that. Like, I suck. I make insults all the time. I always swap. I constantly am like, oh, me, I try to assume that the other person's coming from the best possible way and they're really a great person that has good motivations. And then you watch some of my videos and it's like, no, he's not. Look at this guy. He's like, I know I fail all the time, but I'm just, as a general strategy, like I'm trying to be better at that. And I think that we would all be in a better place. I think that I'm most persuasive when I am being reasonable and I'm giving my people that disagree with me the benefit of the doubt and I'm treating them as a person, not as someone who's immoral. And I think that we'll be better as a country if we all do that. Even if we fail sometimes, we should, constantly be trying to relive up to that. So, if I can't convince you morally not to use these types of strategy, calls to violence, or this kind of language, hopefully I can convince you pragmatically that it's not the way to go. And that means my friends on the left as well. Like, even though I'm ideologically opposed to you and I basically don't want to see your policies implemented, one, even if they were implemented, I would cheer for them to do well because I'm cheering for the country above all else, above my team winning. But secondly, it doesn't matter. I think that the way we go about to getting to those sides, in other words, I would be willing to have the trade-off of leftist people using this having a more cohesive discourse and having their policies then be implemented because that was an effective strategy, than I would be to continue the crazy political discourse we have now where nothing gets done. And obviously, I hope the people on the right follow this advice, and that leads to more policies on the right being pushed. So, all right, if you like this video, like and subscribe. Please recommend me to some other people, and I'll be putting videos up daily. Live stream, as usual, noon on Friday, and I'll be doing a live stream on a friend of mine's channel, Drone Tech, 4:30 on Thursday. All right, everyone, have a good one.